Welcome back to the PFC podcast. The views and opinions you are about to hear are the speakers and do not necessarily reflect those of anyone else. Now on to the podcast.
Welcome back to the PFC podcast. This is Dennis, and today I am with Monti. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. Out here in sunny Tucson.
Nice. Is it warm?
It is. Today is like 96, almost 100. So that's like out here is nice weather.
Right. It's kind of chilly out there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's nice out today. Nice and sunny.
Cool. So today, I asked you specifically to come on because of the topic I'd like to talk about is product development. Medics are constantly kind of innovating ideas, coming up with ideas to make their jobs, hopefully other people's jobs, easier, patient outcomes better, and essentially you're stuck with your Google search or like, how do I get this stuff done? So I wanted to talk to somebody who has done it and has been successful with it about how this process kind of goes. So if we don't mind, let's kind of start at the beginning. I have an idea. It came to me in the middle of the night. As soon as I thought of it, I knew I would save thousands of people's lives. Monuments would be built in my honor, plaques, degrees would be given. I just got to maybe write it down somewhere. Take me from that initial spark of brilliance. How do we even begin? How do I even know this is a good idea?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a good point. So when we first started with the APRU, right? So the engineers brought me in and they said, hey, we have this great idea. And then they showed me what they were doing. And I was like, whoa, that's like, I don't know who would use that thing. It was pretty big, right? And I was like, I don't know who would use that at all. But I'll make some phone calls. And so I called some of the guys that I worked with in the past. I've just recently retired, maybe a year. So I just started calling up medics. I'm just like, hey, these guys want to build this blood refrigerator. What do you guys think? And they're like, yeah, we'll buy it right now. So this goes into that timing piece, right? The market was ready for this device. So they're like, we'll buy it right now if you have it. And I said, well, it's not ready yet. But how would you guys want this to work or size and everything else? So went to the discussion and then came back to the engineers and said, hey, I talked to all these SOF medics from all these units, and they said to make it as small as possible, battery operated, the whole deal. And the engineers looked at me like I was crazy. They're like, that's impossible. We cannot build what you just described, type deal. So again, I think it goes to, like you said, if you have this grand idea, you've got to bounce it off to whoever that customer will be to see if there's any interest in it. And you're always going to get the people, oh yeah, it's great. Oh yeah. So don't believe the first, 10 to 15 people you talk to, but just, run the idea around with people and see if there is an actual demand for it. If there's no, just a little bit of demand, you're not going to get anywhere. You might have a great idea, but if nobody's like, oh yeah, I'd put that in my aid bag, or I would use that for this, then you're probably not going to go anywhere.
Yeah. And absolutely everybody, myself included, you think your idea is going to be the saving grace, of planet Earth. But, actually being able to talk to somebody, talk to other medics, talk to whomever you want the product to be used on, can also make you eat a little bit of humble pie. So be prepared for some no's.
And just putting holes in your whole theory, right? You're like, oh yeah. And then someone's like, yeah, but how would I put that on a helicopter? And you're like, oh, I didn't think about that. Or, how do we get that resupplied? And then you're like, oh yeah, how would you get that resupplied? And, that's just the beginning of trying to figure out what your product will be someday,
Yeah. And I think also just having some patience, the first guy or the first dozen guys that are like, nah, that sounds kind of dumb. If you believe in it, continue refining it, take the good that they've given you, the good feedback at least, refine it.
And it does go into iterations. And then I had a couple people working on a couple of projects, and just some advice, or not advice, but something to help you guys. If you're going to make a product, right? Not SaaS, but if you're going to make some type of hardware product that it's going to physically be something, look into 3D prototyping. And there's companies out there that you can do your sketch or your design or whatever you think it's going to look like or be, I would say, and do a 3D prototype, make something physical for people to touch. So when you're asking somebody like, hey, what do you think about my idea? In their mind, they're already like, sure, it's good. I don't know. But if you put it physically in their hand, even though it's just a prototype, but at least they can look at it and they can go, yeah, I would put it in my bag. No, it won't fit in there the way I do things. Or I could probably put it in this bag, or I can put it on my kit. But a good 3D prototype of whatever and it doesn't cost that much. But if you go down this road, you should probably, I would say 3D prototype something. Machining it is pretty expensive. But 3D prototyping is not too expensive.
Oh yeah. In like Fiverr, I think, is your friend. You can get all kinds of people on there that work for pretty reasonable prices that can do pretty much whatever it is you want them to do. Now, talking about actually talking to people, there's always that risk, right? That sneaky bastard takes your idea and then he becomes, the next Bill Gates, and you're eating soup for the rest of your life. How do you go out and get a patent right away? Like, how can you protect yourself?
Well, going to like any operation, all us military people do, we do a risk assessment of some sort. I mean, some risk assessments are like, I got an aid bag, we're good. And then some risk assessments like really go down step-by-step PACE plan on how you do that. But if you're going to talk to somebody, I would do a risk assessment in the sense of, because you got to talk to somebody, right? But is this somebody you trust to talk about your product with, and just give a general concept? But if you don't talk to somebody, it's not going to move forward. If you just keep it to yourself, so you're going to have to talk to somebody. You just have to risk. Is it worth talking about now? Because maybe the market is we'll say $100,000 lifestyle, sell a product, 100 grand. Nobody's going to steal your idea. But if your idea is this grand idea that could be a $1 billion market or $1 million market, I would protect that, right? So if you think like I potentially could sell $1 million of these, then I would weigh that risk of being, okay, I probably need to, one, get a lawyer, get an NDA. So you need NDA. So a lawyer will write you a proper NDA and do a dual NDA, meaning the two people that are talking both have an NDA, because a lot of people you talk to will also want to protect their own information as they're talking to you about it, right? So some type of dual NDA, just to have some discussions with people about your product. And then when you do that prototyping, get a good shell, but don't go too much detail in your prototype, because the patent process itself, and we talked about this, how long it takes to do anything. So if you have this great idea that's going to make $1 billion, $1 billion company, then of course you want to get a lawyer and you're going to want to patent it. That patent can take up to a year to even get back the initial, like, yeah, you're awarded a patent. You may put in for a patent and your idea was not that special. And there's somebody else in the patent office that already has designed that the product. It just, at the time they designed it, there was no market for it, so it's just kind of sitting there. But now your idea is like, okay, but you go to the patent office and they say, okay, yeah, you can do this provisional patent. Before that provisional patent, you can't try to sell it. You can't try to do anything with that product until you get the provisional patent. You can build your product, but you can't like sell it. You can't market it. You can't tell customers about it, right? You have to keep that all before the provisional, because if that information gets out, someone else can jump in on your patent, right? So you're not protected until you actually get that provisional patent back, and then you go through the process to get your real patent. So again, it goes back to time. You have this great idea, and I like to bring this up. You have this great idea, great. You get a lawyer, you get NDAs, you start talking to people, you put provisional patent right there. I think that's almost like 2 years from your great idea that you had in your, you're sitting on your porch or whatever, and you're like, I have this great idea. So already that's probably a 2-year out process.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. This is a process that's going to test your patience. That's for sure. Just because, this is your idea. You have the fire for it. Seems like absolutely nobody else does. And so they're working their 9 to 5 on your amazing thing. So nobody's going to push like you're going to push. But just understand that this is a process. Definitely start saving some money, because those lawyers are not cheap.
Nope. And then if you're going to decide to do this, again, it's a risk. And so I think of it like, and some people think of business different. Some people think about doing things differently. And, when you're going to have your first baby, it's like, there's no good time. You could have it whenever. It's never a good time to have a kid.
Yep.
That's what I think about it. Like, there's never a good time. You're never like 100% prepared to have this kid. So if you're in the military, it would be beneficial to be, probably retired, because you would have some income coming in. Because I say again, if we're saying it's a 2-year time frame, you get out of the military, unless this is a $1 billion business and you have investors, how are you going to pay your bills for the next 2 years, 3 years? And then the 4th year, you might start selling, and then finding people to sell it at 5 years. So right there, this great idea, that's like 5 years before you can even like get any income to pay your bills. So if you have this great business idea, at least if you're retired from the military, I think you have income, and then you can do these, you can take that risk to do a business. But I wouldn't get out of the military to start a business. Not from what I know now. I would definitely want to, because that's only going to make it go longer, because now you got to work, pay your bills, and then work on your idea and project. So you're probably like 4 or 5 years out. And now you might miss the market. So within that 2 years, your market was there, and someone else came up with a similar idea, maybe a little different design, another course of action, right? There's always 1, 2, 3 courses of action, but someone else has also thought of this idea. And if you're not going fast enough, they may get that idea out there before you, or get some traction before you do. And it's taking you 5 years. It took them 2 to 3 years to get theirs up and going, because maybe they had investment, or their bills are being paid or something. So that's just to consider. If you're going to jump out and do this business, how are you going to pay your bills and still work on your business?
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of leads me to my next point is, do I talk to another company that can build it, market it, et cetera, like the whole like business thing of it? Or do I just go out and build it myself? So like, and what I'm thinking of is, my little backrest, right? It took me literally a couple of hours in the garage to build it. But after I was done, I was like, you know what? I cannot see myself doing this for the rest of my life in the garage. Maybe I should talk to somebody. So, how do you make that determination? Should I start a complete business with all the business side of things, hiring people and HR and all, taxes and all that? Or
yeah, the human part of that is difficult. Well, if you're only going to have like one product and you can't envision other products, I would think that would be something that, like you said, you would build it and maybe sell it to another company, to license it or outright sell the whole thing. But in order to do that, I think you have to be able to prove to that business that it's going to make money. And if they can't make a lot of money, they're not going to give you a lot of money for your idea. They're not going to give you a lot for your licensing, because it takes a lot of money to acquire customers. It takes a lot of money to do marketing and distributing, right? And so if they're like your client, we're going to sell it to only SOCOM, right there, they're already like, yeah, SOCOM has a lot of money. They'll buy some stuff. But not as much stuff that we would want to make off this product. So they're definitely not going to give you a lot of money for your idea. But now, if you have an idea and you can like start building on that and build other ideas, now you're kind of like something another company would definitely consider, because then they see the revenue stream grows, and then you're like, oh no, this product will go outside SOCOM. It'll go here or there. Now they see their market is large. Like SOCOM is like the little, the little marble. This is the little thing. And they're like, yeah, it's okay. Well, there's a little money there. But if you can show them that, yeah, this little marble, but we actually can make it bigger into these other markets, then it becomes interesting to them. And then you might get a good deal on whatever they're doing. That's how I look at it, product. And then, kind of where are you going with this business? Do you think it's a lifestyle business, meaning like, passive income? So you don't have to really do a lot of effort into it, your marketing, these other things. Then it probably would be good to collaborate with another company. But if you see it's bigger than that, and you can pay yourself and pay people, then you might want to do. The other thing about collaboration is it can make things go faster for you as well, right? So you might not make as much money in the beginning, but it may take you 5 years to get somewhere. If you collaborate with someone, it may take you a year or 2 years, and now you're really making some revenue right after 2 to 3 years, because you collaborate with someone that can move your product and move everything faster. So, or if you're going to take your time about it, so take 5-10 years, you don't care, then that's kind of a lifestyle thing. You just do it on your own. So I guess that's what your vision for that product or that company is. Like you said, you could see yourself working in your garage or making these every day to get them out there, right? And then market it and sell it. So if it's a good idea, it's probably good to get what you can get from whoever you're signed on with. And they're doing all the work. You're just
getting paid for whatever they sell, right?
That's right. I'm the idea man, right? So I don't get my hands dirty. So when you came up with the APRU, was that your first?
So that was our first product. Not my first like business little thing, but my first like manufacturing development product. And so the way we went about it, so the APRU, of course, it's actually, we did this faster than most people do it. But it did take a long time in my mind, but we got this product developed, manufactured, 3 years selling, which is pretty fast for a medical device. A big portion of that was SBIR, right? So that's the Small Innovative Business grant that you get from the government. And so we won a couple of those. So that was able to pay for development of the device. And then we made some prototypes, and then we took those prototypes out to the different SOF units, and then they played with those prototypes. Man, they played with the prototypes for almost probably a year of just getting them out there and coming back with feedback and redoing, coming them out, going back and forth till we got to something that was worth it. Then we got the product out there. Some people bought it, started using it. that was probably like 4 years of trying to understand, talking to customers, talking to end users, making the product, get it out there, come back with feedback. It's the same thing we do in the military, right? AARs, getting AARs, improving AARs, getting AARs, improving. And then we made the leap, and then, Intel, same thing. So we started, seeing the Intel on the EMS side, the pre-hospital, starting to do blood products. So then we went over there and started talking to those guys and how they need it. And that's how we came up with our second product, right? So now where things are moving for us, and we're making more products because of our discussions with end users. So we got the Delta Ice out there, and it came from the customers that wanted the APRU, but the APRU is an expensive blood refrigerator. In the grand scheme of refrigerators, it's pretty expensive. It's very robust, military standard, has all this stuff on it, and so it's expensive. So on the EMS side, they were like, well, it's just too expensive for us, but we really want to do blood. So I was like, okay, well, let's see what we can do on a passive cooler thing. But we found out was, though, with all these discussions with customers, doing our source operations. I like getting this SF stuff in here. So just doing our source operations and getting access to people and talking to them and getting back this intel was the most important thing needed was the regulatory documentation, the monitoring, all the temperature recording. They were like, man, that's what we love about the APRU. It's just too expensive. But if we could have all the high-tech part in a different type of device, we would definitely love that. So we took all the high-tech software and moved it into Delta Ice, which is a passive cooler, and then just made that a high-quality passive cooler with all the software. And one of our customers said, we love it because it's the low-tech side with the refrigeration or the cooling, but it's got all the high-tech side of all the documentation and remote monitoring and all. But that all came from discussions with the customers. Like that didn't just come out of the blue. It was like talking to customers over iteration, over again to come to some, final Delta Ice product. And what we did was, again, this is going to a little bit of business of seeing what our competitors are doing out there. What's the enemy doing? What do we do differently how do we do better than the enemy there? And so we built a better mousetrap. It's nothing new. It's nothing like that isn't already out there. We just did a better job of building it with putting some high tech in there. So EMS, they love our ice right now, which led to BloodCom. So now we're actually we're SaaS. So we're actually a software development company now. So we've gone through some iterations and got some momentum. So we have the APRU, we have the ICE, and now we have BloodCom, which is software monitoring for anybody, EMS or anybody. But EMS really likes it. The blood banks really like it because now the blood banks can actually go on this BloodCom and see what the cooler's temperatures are for EMS. And they can monitor it themselves if they wanted to. EMS can get alerts by the cell network, and it'll tell them, hey, your device is going to go out of temperature range, your temperature is too low, or whatever it is. But again, so now we have BloodCom, and EMS is really liking that. We're still working on that, building feature after feature. We're adding features. Just at the end of the month is when all the remote monitoring will come in, features. So they'll be able to get a cell phone text, an email that, someone opened the device, the temperature's out of range, what is the temperature currently, download that document wherever. I guess the secret sauce on this is the fact that the document's always recorded in the device like the APRU. So even if you lose cloud connectivity, that's the problem with a lot of the devices out there measuring temperature now that give alerts, is it's all in the cloud. So if you lose connection with the cloud, you lose all your documentation, right? You don't get all the recording. So our device, it's all recorded internally, so you never lose your document over so many days, but you never lose your temperature records or your documents. You always have that to turn into the blood bank. Because if you lose that after 4 hours, then your blood's no good as far as the blood bank goes. And so you lose all that blood type of. So anyways, just going through Delta Ice. Now we do BloodCom and a lot of software work. Just iteration after iteration, getting feedback and then redeveloping and talking to customers.
Yeah. So when you started, yeah, right. So, like you said, when you first had the idea, you're starting to get into development, like you're putting all your effort onto one device, right? And you're coming from, your unit. So I imagine, all your thoughts, all your feelings about what is the best, whatever, is all, kind of skewed towards that, right? Did you already have thoughts of like, well, like they could use it here and they can use it, on the conventional side, and then, EMS will pick it up, and then, the whole world, everybody will have one, right? I mean, did you think that, or were you like, I'm going to focus on, essentially selling this home because this is my group, and I know this best, and I know for certain, like it'll work there, and like, did you really put lots of thought into all the ancillary little communities?
I was like, hey, we got to save the guys, right? I was like, we got to get blood. It's got to go for it. That was like the first year. That was all no, first 2 years was just like, how do I get this to SOF? How did SOF take blood far forward? How do they start giving blood to patients? Like, they got to do this. We've got to do it. We've got to do it. And then, oh man, just talking to the guys, it was just harder. They were like, yeah, we'd love to do that, but I'll give you an example, like some of the Air Force guys, they got reprimanded because they weren't keeping their temperature record every 4 hours overseas. And so they almost lost their whole blood program. This is before the APRU. So they almost lost their whole blood program. And then there was another group that was doing the same thing, didn't do the documents or the temperature recordings or any of that. So my whole thought was just get this device out there. But then all of a sudden, all this regulatory stuff started coming at me, and they're like, yeah, that'd be great, but we have to do this and we have to keep records, and the blood banks, they're a pain in the ass. And so that's kind of when things started changing for me. About that point was like, whoa, there's a lot more to this than I thought. And so then we started tackling the regulatory part of storing blood. Then the pre-hospital EMS side started getting interested in our product. Not until then. So as soon as we started tackling the regulatory part of the storing blood, then EMS really started becoming interested because they were getting shut down by blood banks. They were going to blood banks asking to start blood programs, but they were getting shut down like, no, you can't do it. But then when they started bringing our device and say, hey, they made all this regulatory FDA stuff. And they're like, oh, okay, now you can... At that point, then it changed. It was like, oh, this is a thing. Like, man, we're doing all this regulatory stuff. Now this is something. But before it was just like, let's get blood as far forward as possible.
Yeah. And I think that's just the natural, you go with what you know. I know this environment real well. They need it. I know they need it. For certain, they'll pick this up. But it's hard to imagine all your little branches that come off of that to other communities.
What I also did was I tried to let go of my bias and my ego. And when I went out and talked to people like the different SOF teams that were using the APRU, I just wrote down exactly what they said about the product. And then I didn't go in with any bias when I went to the engineers. I didn't say like, I think this is a good idea, or, I really just said, hey, this is what they're saying. And I didn't put my spin. I try not to put any of my spin of what I knew before. on any of the product feedback, because again, if I had put my bias in, it might have been designed for one special unit and nobody else, right? So I totally tried to not let what I thought how operation, because I was, landed the milk and honey out there. 10-minute evac, 5-minute evac, very fast treat, throw my helo and go. That's not the rest of the military. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to design anything with that mindset, because it's only like a very small portion of the military that does medicine that way, right? So that's one thing I dropped off. So when you're out there showing your product to people, even though it's a great idea, try to drop your bias and what you think is most important, or your ego, kind of let that go and just like hear what they're saying and then write it down and then just think that's legit. And then maybe some of the stuff you're like, yeah, it's legit, but that's kind of whiny or whatever. There's just some things you're just like, you're just being whiny, or come on, man, you're really going to do that? I don't think so, Right. So you can put some common sense in that.
Yeah. No, I 100% know what you're talking about. Like when I was talking with the other company about the backrest, I was like, this has to be black multicam. It can't be anything else. And, eventually, like you said, I let my ego go. It's not super important that it's black multicam, though it'd be super cool. Maybe just green will be fine.
Yeah. Because then the manufacturing comes in there. They're like, how much is it going to cost us to license multicam? And then how much is it going to cost us to mix that, the color in that for manufacturing? They're like, if we just make it green manufacturing, the cost comes down a lot more. And then we can make this product to a price point that somebody would buy it. Because right now, the price point is kind of high. We kind of know our customers. They're not going to spend that much. But if we go with something simple, that's just the whole manufacturing side coming into making a product, which is a whole nother, beast.
That's a whole other animal. Now, talking about, all these steps, and I think they're all, super logical. But we mentioned this over and over again, like, hey, this takes time. A guy, just today, struck by lightning, has the most brilliant idea ever. How far should he start planning forward that this is actually a thing?
Yeah, and so when I first started out, I was like, it'd be a year or two, we'll get this out there, I won't have to do anything, we'll just sell everything, the business, and move on. And that is not how it is. A grind, it's a marathon. It takes time. So if you're like, hey, I have this great idea, in a year I'll have it done, I have a company ready to buy it in 2 years, then I would multiply that to 4 to 6 years before you get to that point of trying to sell it to another company. If you're like, hey, I'm going to build this out, it's going to take me 3 to 5 years to build out and sell it, then you're probably like 8 to 10 years out from doing that. So I would just definitely multiply whatever you're doing times 2 or 3. That's probably realistic. And then also, when you go into this, is this going to be a lifestyle business, meaning you're just going to take profits, put it back in, you're really not going to build, which a lifestyle business you probably won't sell. So you're going to get your profit, but you're probably not going to sell your business on a lifestyle side. If you have a bigger vision, then you should go into this thinking you're going to sell your business. You may not, but if you go into it thinking you're going to sell your business, just not your product, but your business, then that's a whole nother way of thinking about capital, because it takes a long time to make profit and to get it back in your business. But if you're going to try to sell this business, then you got to figure out how you're going to get enough capital to move fast to sell your business. If you're going to take your time, that's like lifestyle, right? Lifestyle, 10, 15 years, and then I might sell the business and get the profit off that. Or if you're like, hey, I'm going to do this business and I'm going to sell it in, 5 to 10 years, you've got to figure out how you're going to get the capital to invest in manufacturing equipment. All that costs money. People cost money. Marketing costs money. All that costs money. So even if you're making a little bit of profit, it doesn't set you up for that next year of growth and the next year of growth. So again, what's your vision? Is it a lifestyle business? You're going to make some profit, like, make some passive income. It'd probably take a couple years, but if you have a bigger vision and you think you're going to make a lot of money with whatever this product is, then recalibrate yourself to a 5-year, 10 effort and how you're going to get capital, which could be grants, SIBRs, angel investors, or you're retired and you're getting paid, right? And you're paying your bills and you can just work on it in your garage as you go along. That's probably another way to do that.
Yeah. Are there a lot of grants for veterans like this, or just anybody?
The grants are out there for anybody with a great idea. So anything, if you have a great idea, you think it's a great idea anyways, you can apply for SIBRs, and there's a website for SIBRs. And then they put them out. DOD puts out their own SIBRs. The federal government puts out SIBRs. And basically they put it out and they're asking for people with ideas to make something. So they're like, we want a blood refrigerator, because that's basically what it said. We want a blood refrigerator that is portable. And so we submitted and we said, hey, we have all these end users. This is kind of what the product they want. We went to the Air Force. The Air Force said, yeah, the Air Force actually does want something like that. So we'll give you $50,000 to make some type of prototype. It doesn't have to work. It just has to have something that people can touch and play with. We made that prototype, got in front of some end users. They're like, yeah, this is kind of what we think we would want. And then so we went back to the Air Force, reapplied for the next phase of the SIBR, and then they gave us more money to build a real working prototype. But then that's the end of the road. That's the catch-22 there is, as soon as they give you the money to build that prototype, they kick you to the curb. Then you're totally on your own to sell, market, manufacture, get products to customer. At that point, if you're thinking that is going to be your transition, that's another year or 2 years. You got to figure, they call it the valley of death when it comes to like SIBRs, is you get all this money to build this prototype, and then you go into this valley of death, meaning you get no money from the government. And if you don't have customers at that point, then you got no money coming in. And eventually that great idea you have dies, right? There's a lot of great ideas out there that die after getting a SIBR. That's why I say your great idea, someone might have already made it. It might be out there. There might be a patent for it. There might not. Someone might have already tried it and they just ran out of capital. They just ran out of money. So that idea kind of died. Or someone else has this great idea and they're just moving faster than you. You think you have this great idea, but I always just talking to different companies all the time. I get calls all the time with people that have this great idea. And I'll just use this week alone, I've been on 3 calls for these great ideas to deliver blood by drone. How about that? Let's deliver blood by drone. Well, you have this great idea. And I'm like, okay, well, they're doing it in Ukraine right now. I mean,
yeah, they've been doing it in Africa for a long time.
Yeah, right. But I have this great idea to deliver by drone, and I'm like, okay, yeah, okay. Yes, that is a thing. It's not that hard to do, but again, there's these people that think they have this great idea, and there's other people out there thinking of the same idea. So again, if you think you have this great idea, lawyer up. Weigh your risk on who you're going to tell, and you're going to have to tell somebody. You have to move it up. Get your lawyers, get the NDAs, and if you're going to do it, you've got to execute. You've got to start moving, because your idea, someone else is thinking about that idea too. And look at how many tourniquets are out there, right? I mean, there's a lot of tourniquets out there. And one person made a tourniquet, and then someone else made a tourniquet. it's very fast. So if you're slow with your idea, again, someone else can, even though you have a patent, they just got to change a little bit, and then they can make it. So your patents aren't foolproof. They're kind of like, they make you feel good. They kind of make you feel protected, but they really don't. Especially if you don't have a patent in China, they can make it over there, right? In the U.S., they can't make your product, but in China, they can make your product. In India, they can make your product if they get that information, and then they can come back and sell it. So again, it's just, if you have an idea and you're going to do it, there's no good time. You're just going to have to go.
Yep. Sibers. How do you spell that? SIBERS?
Small Innovative Business Research. And there's STRs out there too, STTRs. Again, that's government grant money, and you just apply. Basically, you have to put in a proposal, and you got to prove that this is a market out there, and you have customers and that. But if you can just prove a little bit of that, and it's a good idea, they'll invest 50 grand and see what you come up with. 50 grand to make a product is not a lot, but it's enough to get some type of prototype. Then you can talk to people.
Yeah.
But even if you get those, it's after the phase 2. That's when companies disappear. Their great ideas disappear after that because they don't have enough capital to keep the company going, and it just dies.
Yep. So, after all this good news about death of your ideas, if you were able to go back in time and talk to yourself at the very beginning, what kind of advice would you give yourself to, save yourself a lot of heartache?
You said it before, patience, but I really didn't know it was going to take this long. Like, if I could have said, you're going to start this project and it's going to change a lot, and it's going to be 6 years down the road before anybody really even gets serious about your company. We mean what I wouldn't do it, but it would have been nice to know it was going to take this long. And then how much effort once you get the business going, it's like the op tempo is high. It's always going. So like, again, a lot of things in business are similar to military operations, similar, but not exactly the same. But it's similar. You kind of use the same approaches and the same principles going into things. But again, one thing is, I wouldn't say if it's luck, but one thing is timing. Timing is key on your product. If you're too early with your product, it's going to take a long time. If you're too late for your product, then it's not going to go anywhere. So again, it's like the APRU wouldn't be a thing in 2010 when I needed it, or in 2009 when I was in Iraq running around there, right? I needed it in 2007. I needed blood in 2002 when I first went over. I needed blood, but I wasn't going to get it, right? And so there was no technology to make that until around 2015, 2016, because it's a computer in there. So the computer, someone actually, Rob, wrote the code that runs the APRU. Well, 2007, nobody was writing code to work in a blood refrigerator. So it's all on timing too. So is there a market? You got to see if there's someone will actually buy your product. And just because they tell you they will doesn't mean they actually will. Is there actually demand out there for your product? Then you might be in the beginning stages and good timing. But again, I think if someone had said, is this the right time? Are you sure? Luckily it was, but like if we would have tried this in 2010, there was no demand there to do it. So we would have been too early in 2010 to get this moving.
Yeah, it'd have been a good idea in a specific unit, in a specific situation, and you could have just run out of steam with that.
Yep. It would have been just fall off the cliff.
Yeah.
Valley of death. But again, I think about it. I didn't know it was going to take this long. So some patience. It's taken longer than I thought. And not understanding business in the sense of just because you have one device, if you make one thing, if you're going to keep your business alive, like you have to make more things because one thing is not enough. So if you're going to bring people in and you're going to hire people, you've got to make more stuff. You got to have more stuff to sell. One, it's just like Microsoft, right? Just think about Microsoft, how many iterations that went through, or Google, or any other company out there. They add features. It's like when your business starts, it just continually goes, and you got to keep adding stuff. If you don't have a plan to keep building and adding stuff, it's also probably going to die, unless it's a lifestyle business, right? And you're just going to sell it, your idea to somebody. But just know they're not going to. Your great idea, it's that. What is it? It's that sales philosophy, right? If you're selling something, you think it's worth 10,000. If somebody's buying it, they think it's worth 5,000, right? There's that paradox there. So your great idea, you think it's worth 10,000, but when you go to whatever company, they're like, no, that's about 3,000. So just be prepared for that. What you think it's worth, someone buying it probably doesn't think it's worth that same price.
Right. Absolutely. Yep. You're going to have to prove it, like just that simple, that backrest. Essentially, I just laid out like, hey, it's in the CPGs. Like it's basic medical principle. Sitting somebody up, they breathe better. And, everybody turns and looks at the doctor is like, yep, that's true. And then, and that's when everybody was happy.
Yeah. And then, we also have that Sub W coming out. It passed the FDA.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't pass the FDA, but Eastern Carolina did the testing out there with Ragged Edge Solutions out there. They did all the testing and they said, yep, it's good to go. It's not going to destroy blood cells. And so now we have to submit that 510K. We have the bigger device coming out, the TBS, which holds around, it's going to hold around 40 units of blood, maybe more, maybe less. Lasts on 10 days of battery. But starting out, I never thought we were going to build this system of systems. It just keeps evolving. And so now we have like multiple devices. We have software. It's all talking to each other. It's just getting people to realize how important it is to monitor blood product. And, again, I see the future battlefield and it's all going to be interconnected as much as people don't want it to be. And they don't want Bluetooth and they don't want cell. And I totally get that. Rockets are going to come in, but that's the future. You guys are going to have to figure out how to use cell networks and Bluetooth. Because if you're trying to not do it, you're getting behind the enemy, right? You got to keep ahead of them. And so if you're trying to take yourself back to the Stone Ages, you're probably not going to win. So technology is key. So just going to figure out, again, how you're going to use all these things and how they're all going to talk to each other. And like our devices talk through the cell network to whoever, that'd be good if, FOB wherever knew that FOB wherever had 20 units of blood. And then this FOB only had 2 because they had a mass casualty. It'd be good if MedOps was like, hey, let's move 10 units of blood over to FOB on this side because they're down to 2 and they need 8, right? But that's the future. That's the future of seeing everything on the battlefield. So you're not going to be able to avoid having cell or Bluetooth or whatever. You're gonna need that on the future battlefield.
Yep, I definitely agree. It's just how do you use it in a smart way so you don't get everybody killed.
Yeah, and exactly. And the funny thing is I've been in a while. So, the side A teams back in our day in the 90s when we were doing not long range, but we were doing the what is the recon guys for SF teams? What were they back in the day? Just an SF
special reconnaissance.
Yeah, like a special reconnaissance, right? And so, they had the side A teams on our side, but they had them on the other side, right? And so you had to set your radio up a certain way with the antenna pointing a certain way so nobody could pick you up, so you could send that. You still had to send your radio message out, but again, people were looking for your radio, so you'd have to set it up a certain way. So again, people are like, oh my God, they're going to see us and missiles. It's we've been doing this a while, folks. Just figure it out. Figure out how you're going to do it. You can do it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And then, the more technology you have, obviously the more information you have to send. And so then it came out to bursts and all kinds of craziness.
Yeah. But you did it. You figured it out.
Yep.
Who didn't figure it out was the Taliban. So they would have that FM radio on the hillside, right? You would hear them putting in the ambush.
Yes.
Again, you out technologed them.
Right.
Right. But you would hear them hey, we're set on the mountainside over here. You're they're like, hey, they're setting up an ambush up here. Okay, well, let's call in some aircraft.
Yeah.
But, let's not go backwards to that. Let's get ahead.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. Cool. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, again, I think there's a lot of great ideas out there, and I get them all the time. They're good, and other people are coming with them. I would just say, if you're going to do it, there's no good time. Just going to have to do it. And don't fiddle faddle around with it. Don't slow roll it. You got an idea. Talk to a lawyer, get NDAs, make a prototype, get that prototype in front of people. Because at that point, when you get the prototype around, you'll get a good idea if it's going to be something, right? And you won't waste a lot of time getting out there because someone else is thinking of that same idea.
Yep, absolutely.
And if they go faster, they beat you. It doesn't matter if they beat you to market, because your idea might be better, but you're kind of fighting uphill.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Cool. Well, again, thank you, Monty. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your experience.
Yeah, thanks.
That's it for today's podcast. Make sure to go to our website, www.prolongedfieldcare.org. Check out our free downloads and a ton of other helpful information. Grab a bag of our fresh roasted PFC coffee, links in the description below, and stay on the bleeding edge of combat and austere medicine. This is Dennis for the PFC podcast. Out.